This video is going to analyze my data regarding the heart rate accuracy of the Whoop, the Garmin watch, and the Apple Watch. I gotta say it was both tough and annoying to make this video since I had to wear 4 trackers for the 20 workouts I compiled data for. So before we get into the video, let's first understand some things about how these devices work and how I went about gathering my data. If you don't care about that, you can always skip to this timestamp. First off, each of these devices will be measured against the results of the Polar H10, which is highly regarded as the most accurate active heart rate tracker on the market. And if you haven't seen my video on how this device works and the clinical results of its measurements, you should definitely go check that video out because I'm not going to go in depth on that device here. Just know that for the purposes of this video, it's going to be my gold standard. And per the definition of accuracy, the Polar H10 is going to provide us the data points we're wanting each of these devices to hit. The one thing I do need to make clear is that the Polar H10 is an ECG chest monitor versus the PPG monitors of the Whoop, Garmin, and Apple. So why do these devices use PPG and not ECG during activity? Well, for something like chest straps, they have the ability to be close to the heart to receive those ECG signals, whereas our wearables on our wrists or bicep aren't able to obtain that reading. As many of you do know, the Apple Watch does have the ECG capabilities, but it requires you to remain very still and to create somewhat of a closed circuit to receive the ECG signal into the device, something that's not going to work for working out. PPG, on the other hand, does allow for active measurements, but it's not a direct reading of the heart rate. What it is a measurement of the blood being pumped into the skin. The light-emitting hardware on the other side of the device creates a reflective measurement that the device receives and determine when the blood is being pumped, and then each of their proprietary algorithms determine what's a heartbeat and what's just merely noise. It's the holistic use of the hardware and the software that are the money makers for these devices. But you know what's tricky about PPG? That it can be very sensitive person to person. And this is something I covered in another video over the Apple Watch. Things like skin tone, muscle density, body fat percentage, the cleanliness of the device, whether it's being worn somewhere with tattoos, are you wearing it tightly enough to the skin, and even your own personal movement. It can be so subjective to the user that your experience may not be the same as someone else. And this is something that I think is very important to understand and is often missed in other reviews. Lastly, when we're looking at the charts, what you're seeing is an extraction of the data compiled together on one easy to compare visual. The Polar and Garmin have the ability to directly on their OEM software extract the data, but for the Apple Watch, I used an app called HealthFit, and for the Whoop strap, its connectivity to Strava allowed me to extract the data from their platform. It's not as detailed as Whoop's own app, but it was good enough for the purposes of this video and analyzing the data. Now let's get into the results. I tried to do a large variety of workouts to get a nice variation in data, and with all that work, it basically came down to 2 categories that affected accuracy. What I'll call erratic movements and steady state. We're not going to go into each of these charts because that video would just be entirely too long and I think it's just unnecessary. So let's just look at 2 prime examples of each. The first is a CrossFit workout, which will be the erratic workout, and the second is on the Peloton, a very controlled and steady state environment. So why an erratic workout? Because for the duration of a workout, the devices will move, break contact with the skin, and experience a number of things that will have a negative effect on the readings. Anytime the devices can't get a proper reading or receive readings that could be potential noise, their algorithms and your inputs, like your choice of workout, will do what they can to fill in the gaps. Now, here's a tip from me. There's a reason why I love these sport loop types of straps. They're micro-adjustable and do an excellent job at keeping the device close and minimizing the movement. So let's take a look at the CrossFit workout. This one had a nice variety of movements that included burpees, box jumps, a row, and squat cleans. The first thing that's going to jump out at you is that green line that is so far off that you have to know something is wrong. And that was my Garmin Fenix 5. And it consistently showed these kind of readings every time I was doing an erratic workout. I even spent over an hour on the phone with Garmin customer service to see if there was a fix. Side note, they were super helpful and the service was phenomenal, but even after working with them on the phone, I still got the same readings. I gotta imagine that there's something wrong with the device, like there's something with the hardware, perhaps the accelerometer, because what you'll see is more consistent readings on the Peloton workout when my arm was just remaining still. Regardless if there was hardware issue causing an anomaly in my readings, I thought it was a great example to share as a cautionary tale that regardless of the quality and reputation of a brand and their products, things can be wrong. And the Garmin Fenix series is not a cheap watch, so I was super disappointed in this discovery. But as I use this solely for swim, bike, run training, I'd be pairing this with the Polar H10 chest strap anyway, and for me, it's not all loss. I can still use it. And there's another important note that should be made. When we're looking at all-day fitness trackers, what we're looking for is accuracy to the average heart rate. Why? Because despite the differences in these devices from the Polar H10, whether the readings we're getting are higher or lower, the numbers are still averaging out. So for the purposes of any calculations utilizing the heart rate, like caloric expenditure for example, it's still likely the number output should also have the same relative accuracy. As can be seen here, the Apple Watch definitely performed the best, but it's still not accurate enough to be used for something like zone training. You can easily find yourself in one or hell even two zones removed, so that's not gonna work. But with the Whoop and Apple Watch, they both showed over 98% accuracy in relation to the Polar H10 data, with the Apple Watch coming slightly ahead and the Garmin, well, it is what it is with that data. But when it came to steady state workouts, which again would be running, cycling, or even bodybuilding workouts, since the movements are much slower and calmer, they all did great, even the Garmin. Much better confidence in the data here for me, and even with some of the data points hitting right on the money on the Apple and the Whoop. So what's the conclusion for my little experiment here? That at least in my use, the Whoop and Apple Watch performing at over a 98% accuracy are 100% fine for my reliance on the data. But when I'm going to do zone training, I'm still going to be using the Polar H10 and use the Garmin, since the reliance on the heart rate data is much more sensitive and important. One last point before I conclude this video is that I get a lot of questions with regards to where I wear my Whoop strap versus the bicep or the wrist. Personally, I wear it on my bicep because it's not visible for me. I can hide it and it's much more comfortable. I even forget sometimes that I'm even wearing it, but I haven't found any definitive evidence as to which is more accurate. One theory I did read is that due to the higher muscle density on the bicep, it means there's more blood flow to the area and better for PPG readings, which I guess could make sense. But if that's some video that you want to see, I can do it for you. Just let me know in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, follow me on all the socials, and I'll see you in the next one.